I'm the man in the box. That's all we got.
Yeah.
Got to keep it real.
Awesome.
Got to keep it real with the grunge.
Yeah, exactly. It was a killer follow-up to our last week's guest, Jason.
Jason was awesome.
Yeah. But I think he did better.
But honestly. I liked it. But I really appreciated Jason doing original songwriting for us. That was that took a little effort on his part.
That was insane.
Yes. I love it now. I love it. There must be some kind of update to Zoom, because when you're playing guitar and we're doing our thing, all of a sudden a little pop-up window says, set up professional audio in audio settings. And it said, are you doing music? It's like, I guess Zoom keeps getting more and more enhanced over time,
Yeah. I don't see that at all.
It's weird. It just popped up on my screen. It's bizarre. Like it recognized that we were doing music. And so that's kind of cool. Yeah, professional music.
Yes.
That means you're getting
show.
Not like our show.
Yeah, full disclaimer. Welcome to IoT Coffee Talk.
Amateur hour.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the Wayne's World of IoT talk show. It is. Yeah, and we ramble on.
Yes.
So don't expect anything concise. Don't expect anything organized. It's just shooting from the hip.
But you know who else rambled on? Led Zeppelin. Ramble on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And we have to do that song. I haven't
done it yet. Yeah.
So.
What in the hell are we talking about today?
I don't know. There's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. I don't know how much of it's related to IoT, but
there's a lot of crazy shit going on, isn't there?
Especially around security.
Security. So there's security in Afghanistan, and there's lack of security. There's lack of security with baby monitors.
Oh man. Yeah, and then we have the whole Delta thing happening.
Yeah.
And
just when we thought it was over and we're all busting out, it's coming back. It's like Pacino. It's like they keep pulling me back.
Yeah. So, I was wondering, hey, this might be a cool one. How about happy IoT? We're always, I just kind of feel like we oftentimes have to talk about the issues related to IoT, and because we're missing the mark on the big numbers, right? And we have a lot of people chasing inflated expectations. So we're just trying to keep it real. But is there such a thing as happy IoT? Can we just be happy?
I think Pharrell wrote a song about happy IoT.
That's what we should have played in the intro.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do that sometime. That sounds good. I like Pharrell.
Think about it, dude. We have the world on fire. Quite literally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Running out of water. I just saw another report about how Lake Mead is down to 34%. This is a massive well, okay. And so that's not the happy stuff. But what?
Not happy.
Let's figure out what is happy IoT.
Happy IoT.
Yeah. None of that stuff has anything to do with IoT in most senses, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it looks like the world is in a funky situation.
Yes.
IoT maybe can bring some happiness to
exactly. So we need some kind of remote happiness that is brought to us from afar with the power of IoT and connectivity and all that stuff. What could that be?
Yeah, maybe I think you're starting to go in a weird taboo direction, so let's not go there. I think we don't have Rick on the show.
No.
We can't.
I was actually thinking
topic.
I was just thinking, remote cameras of people being happy, like in the North Pole with Santa Claus or something. I don't know. I'm at a loss. Yeah, it does. But you bring up a good,
real, right?
You bring up a good point. a lot of stuff we talk about does feel like it's a big downer, doesn't it?
Well, here's an interesting thing. It's all about problem solving, and when you think about problems to be solved, they're usually sort of downer stuff until
Yeah.
you figure out what the solution is.
Yeah.
And if you figure out what the solution is, and you can actually implement it and
Right.
do that in a way that doesn't suffocate your finances, then you're happy.
Yes.
That's happy.
So maybe, because no doubt about it, a lot of times people with IoT and sensing, they're trying to mitigate a problem, a negative thing, right?
Yeah.
And we do overemphasize on that, no doubt about it, and it's about, I got to cut my cost and I got to replace people with technology, or I need to, make sure I don't have downtime and all that. But you're right, the happy side of the other side of that coin in IoT is, how do I use IoT for things that make me happy, like making more money, keeping my employees safe, or stuff like that. Those, sometimes we talk about new business models that are afforded to you by IoT that lets you win business that you would not have won otherwise.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I mean,
my IoT watch makes me happy sometimes.
Yes.
I don't know.
Are you sure it's the watch, or it isn't the wristband? Because that's a pretty funky, cool looking.
It is cool.
That's a expensive looking wristband.
And yet it was inexpensive. I remember getting this. Did you remember back in time, not that long ago, when you started seeing people putting different products on Instagram?
Uh-huh.
And as you're scrolling around, and all of a sudden I saw people, it's like, hey, we're making cooler looking watch bands for your watch, your Apple Watch. And I was like, and then I remember saw a news report and people are like, that's actually a thing. And people are starting to sell and use Instagram for e-commerce.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, that's kind of cool. And so I bought this, and it wasn't that expensive at all, actually. But you're right, it certainly dresses up the watch as opposed to just having the plain old band that it comes with, right? Unless you buy the expensive, fancy one.
You know what? I think we're onto something.
Yeah.
So when you think about IoT, there's the device, right?
Yeah.
And we sometimes talk about how these devices, actually Mark brought this up, devices need to kind of look cool, even if you're putting them out in a field somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? And when we think about consumers, right, and consumer IoT is something that we've only talked about a few times. I think the thing is the IoT solution itself may be invisible, whatever function it provides, like the watch, what you have with the Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or what have you. There need, in order to really wrap that IoT stuff that's really hard to sell, you need a nice looking
I agree.
gadget.
I agree. You're right. That nice look.
That makes you happy, and
it does.
And because what, when the Apple Watch first came out, one of the things I wrote about was how the thing that's going to make probably the biggest difference, the key success, the factor for driving adoption and just success of the Apple Watch were the bands.
Yeah.
Because I can only imagine that there's going to be a ton of companies out there and brands that want to create their own, watch bands for the Apple.
And a band is a great way to express yourself.
Yeah.
In fact, aside from having a leather band or whatever, you could have or stainless steel or different like that. You could imagine people putting funny logos or slogans or silly things on top of bands.
Yeah.
And then someone might want to have a different band for each day of the week.
Yeah.
With a change with their wardrobe. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. But you know what? You're right. What people see in IoT, even though most of IT is invisible, actually it helps sell for sure. Whether it's a wearable or like these, it's funny. You made me think back to platforms like Lumada, there's all this graphical interface stuff and cool looking stuff there. And the reality was, this is for the salespeople. Ultimately, a salesperson needs to sit down with a customer, open up their laptop, and say, this is Lumada, or this is whatever your product is. And it needs to look cool, and it needs to wow people. It may be that visual thing is almost never used in reality, but you do need that wow factor as a sales tool for sure.
Yeah. This is a weird topic. Happy IoT.
I think we're crashing and burning really badly here.
I know.
I
feel that too.
So let's just go back to the dark side. So I read about those. I saw the news.
That's about as happy as we can get with that.
I'm so sorry, people. We're just, it's over.
It's just
we're going back to the dark side. We started off with Alice in Chains. Lane Staley is dead. Rest in peace. Along with everyone else from Seattle in the grunge, except for Eddie Vedder. Yeah, and Dave Grohl. Right. Absolutely. So we're back to the dark side.
Okay.
So we saw a whole bunch in news yesterday, a bunch of baby monitors that all have this insane vulnerability. And it's interesting, so often we think one company is controlling end to end how they build that IoT product and the back end, all that stuff. And it was really an eye opener to say, well, no, they're taking dependencies on chipsets from this company, and they're taking the different dependencies on a kind of a protocol and pathway to get data somewhere from some other company. And it looks like a lot of these companies aren't as thoughtful as we thought they might be in putting these together. What they're really doing is, I need to rapidly slap together this product as fast and cheaply as I can. And in their case, they've sold millions, tens of millions. It looks like they said, I think I read upwards to 80 million devices could have this vulnerability where hackers can get in and start looking at the video and intercepting stuff. And it's like on baby monitors and using it for other stuff. And I think we've had hacks on baby monitors in the past too.
Yeah, definitely.
But I found it really interesting that there's a supply chain of different players, and then they cobble it all together to create a solution.
And it's not just hardware; it's software too.
It is the software. Yeah, it is.
I mean, well, when we think about the IoT, we think about network and device hacks. We probably don't talk as much about software, but there's that software supply chain. Let me correct myself. The supply chain, right? And then looking at it more from the perspective of a system supply chain, not just hardware, in these little categories and then pointing fingers at each other. It's looking at the whole sourcing of all the components, as well as the flow of how the device and just the whole system, the software, everything gets assembled, and then being able to come up with a secure offering.
Yeah,
super hard.
What I found interesting, just reading the article, the device presents a unique identifier, which is very typical in IoT. You uniquely identify each device. But it did not also come along with a password or a security token or anything else. It was just, here's my ID. And that's all it's presenting to the network and to the back-end systems. And so it was kind of talking about how, people could, it's not like they're readily going to be able to find out legit IDs or whatever. But I thought just having just identity only and nothing else was kind of a big red flag for me. Instead of having extra parts of that authentication. Obviously, like when we all log into computers, we don't just type in our username and say go.
Yeah.
We have to put in something else, our password, right? Among other things. Yeah. So I found that kind of surprising. So, I feel like they took some shortcuts, and they probably we haven't been burned yet, so we're okay, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Security, we've talked about security so often here, and people think of it as a hassle. It's a tax. It's overhead. It doesn't go to my bottom line. I don't want to do it. We talk about all our friends who work for security companies who've struggled with great products, but they struggle to sell them because people don't want to pay.
Yeah, there's honestly no consequences for a hack. I mean, just look at Experian, TransUnion, all these credit companies, credit rating companies that have been hacked, and where our personal data, very important. I mean, security numbers, everything, have basically been posted on the dark web.
Yeah,
and look at their stock.
It cracks me up that those companies send you emails saying, hey, sign up for our credit reporting, whatever thingy, security deal. And I'm like, wait, aren't you the one that got hacked and exposed all our stuff?
Yeah.
Forget it. Or sign up here and we'll help improve your credit score.
Yep.
I saw a certain mobile operator got hacked yesterday or last night.
T-Mobile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too crazy about that.
A lot of social security numbers, driver's license numbers, a lot of stuff like that all got exposed.
Well, yeah, so much for 5G being secure, right? I mean, that's something that operators for their infrastructure worry about. If there's people basically, stealing bandwidth, and capacity. A lot of the data that matters to the consumer or their customers are stuff that are in the BSS and front office systems, right?
Yeah. I don't know how the hack happened. I don't know if it necessarily went to the 5G network. It probably was a hack on the company itself and getting into their back-end systems. Could have been a phishing.
Front office systems, right?
Yeah. It was probably someone clicked on a link like usual, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. I talked to different friends. I know we've all talked about it. Like, I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and they test their own employees by putting out phishing emails to see what percentage of their own employees actually click on stuff. And they do training to say, don't click on it. And then they do the secret test, and 40% of the employees all clicked on the thing.
This is the way I look at it. Anyone who is persistently on Facebook is probably one of those types of folks who just clicks on anything because you just don't care. You don't have that, and that's the big issue. Is that the general perception and the understanding amongst the 99% of folks who don't know what cybersecurity is and what the risks are, what you and I see and cybersecurity experts see. I mean, they just don't care about this stuff. When it comes to privacy, they have no idea what that really means. They think they have it, they have a right to it. They just don't understand how they forfeit it regularly on a daily basis.
Right.
And they don't realize that they actually don't have rights. That's why you have these different mechanisms that are used to basically get your consent. Not that you necessarily have a right, but to get your consent that your information can be used for XYZ purposes. And it boils down to ignorance, and ignorance isn't a bad word. It just means that you just don't know something. Right? Everyone's ignorant. I'm ignorant.
It just means that we froze.
It's just most folks are ignorant about this stuff. And they're also ignorant of the fact that it's super important and will have implications, but they just don't know. Right.
Yeah. We just don't know. So you and I are doing a session today with our friends at Zedida. Not to be confused with Zedata. But I think Stephanie likes Zedata because it felt like she was saying data or something. Oh my my gosh.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So 5G accelerating edge computing. So we're not going to give any, we're not going to disclose any of our talking points. You'll have to register, as we
Yes.
indicated last week, and
Yeah.
be able to have a opportunity to basically get wisdom from some really cool folks from Ericsson, yours truly, Rob, Tiffany, and folks from Google, VMware, Siemens, and am I missing someone else? I think that's it, right?
I think that'll be cool.
I'll be moderating.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's also another event that's been going on this week with people we know. Our friends at the Things Network have got a week-long event going on. Also, they're using the same platform as Adida, that Hop-In platform.
Yeah.
And so that's been going on all week. And it's basically workshops and sessions really to teach you how to do LoRaWAN. And they actually, prior to the event, weeks in advance, they said, if you're registering, here are the devices that you need to go buy so that you can follow along and learn how to build this stuff with us.
Cool.
Now, I happen to be on the road right now in Arizona, but I actually did buy all the stuff. And luckily, all the recordings are saved. So when I get back to Seattle, I'll watch them again. But yeah, it was gear. It was like really small microcontrol, like Arduino devices. There's a MKR, whatever, Arduino device that's really tiny that also has a LoRaWAN radio on it. They also asked to buy a shield that I think does temperature and humidity. And then on the server side, the gateway side, they had you just get a Raspberry Pi with a Raspberry Pi hat and stuff from, I think it was Rack Wireless, RAK. That allows multiple devices to send LoRaWAN communications to this gateway. And then from there, you can turn that gobbledygook into IP and send it onto your normal network or whatever. And so I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a great way to hands-on. I remember I was watching the keynote and it was like, we're going to teach you how to get into, it's like how you could start a career in the LoRaWAN business. It was really a lot of nuts and bolts to really empower people to say, oh, I actually can now build this myself with my hands and build these networks. So I think it's kind of cool. A lot of times we just have high level sessions and stuff. This one's like really medieval. And so our good friend Mark Poos is involved in that.
Medieval.
Yeah.
Well, I think
so Mark is delivering some of the sessions on behalf of Belena. Teaching people, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? You've described IoT as being it's just the plumbing, right? And I'm just thinking back a couple of weeks when Mark and I were on talking about how to start a career in IoT, and I was just thinking, you were talking about all the high level stuff. I mean, how many plumbers do you see attending like conferences where they just talk about high level topics on plumbing?
No,
they don't. They talk about like new types of pumps and new technologies and new that are very tactical, practical, right?
Very practical. They get trained.
And really, and plumbing is like long-term infrastructure. It's like durable infrastructure that has to be maintained over time, and that's kind of like what IoT is. And I think thinking that everything is software defined, software centric, that's all great stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to maintain this infrastructure that can take a lot of different forms and scales, right?
Yeah.
So really the way to think about this business might be we even mentioned it, I think 20 episodes ago. Buy a truck, right? Buy some overalls, right? And go and take that low cost, high value IoT solution and lay that stuff out. That might be the business model. Just think of yourself as a plumber.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound sexy,
right. But we need plumbers. We need plumbing.
And think about how much plumbers make.
They do pretty well, don't they?
Yeah, some of the folks that I know that just make crazy dinero per hour are plumbers.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be afraid to be a plumber, kids. It's a good job. I think there's some value here. I think we're catching on to something.
Maybe this is the happy IoT.
This is the happy IoT. It just took a while for us to get there.
Yeah.
Learning a skill, making it real. Because a lot of times we talk a lot and we do a lot of high level stuff, and we talk about use cases and other things that people can grab onto, which is valuable. But man, have an event like they're having this week where it's just down and dirty. And so I was thinking, I've known about LoRa for years, and we've got friends that work at SimTech and the Things Network. We've had Wanky on before. Yeah. And so, but it's like, but have I really spent a lot of time doing it myself and building that stuff and then seeing it work and seeing it communicate? Yeah. I really haven't. I've watched other people do it and I've observed it, but I haven't done it myself. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm ready to do it. And I think I was also pushed in that direction because of what I saw, when my partners and I went out to that hops farm and did the real thing with agriculture. And we used cellular, we used LTE-M, and it worked fine. But I talked to lots of farmers out there who go, we have no coverage, no cellular coverage at all. And so it's not an option for us. Yeah. And many of them are very interested in LoRa and LoRaWAN to build their own network, to build their own, because guess what? I'm going to learn, I'm going to do it, but just buying the pieces, I got low cost, low battery, the microcontrollers that can get some of that sensing doing. And then the gateway that's going to receive all that stuff from the farm, and those things can send data 5 or 10 miles. That gateway didn't cost much at all. It's a Raspberry Pi with some hats on it. And then guess what? After that, I'm done. I don't have to keep paying some network provider every month to make this work. It's just like you buying Wi-Fi, in your house. You buy it once, and now you got your network in your house.
Yeah, and that's the thing. IoT is not academic, right?
Yes,
it's like literally plumbing.
Yeah, it's plumbing. It's
a plumber. You probably don't need to go to college and get a computer science degree or a engineering degree. A lot of these products, services are being wrapped and simplified and made available in composable fashion.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, your job is to integrate stuff and go out there and then, help clients manage the solution.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure, the plumbing. If you think that your business, the business of IoT is like some sexy unicorn, you're a startup and you're going to become some $1 trillion unicorn. Maybe that's not the way you think about it.
Right.
Go and call up your local plumber, buy him a coffee or a glass of wine, sit down and ask him what are the best practices of being a plumber. And game, dude. Yeah.
And so there's nuts and bolts of how to put it together, make it work, and then there's the cost. And guess what? Everybody's going to want it to be the lowest cost possible, right? No surprise there. It's got to work, and it's got to be as low cost possible because it's not even their business. Their business is something else. IoT is a helper, letting them know what's going on so they can make better decisions. And so, it's always a weird thing working for Ericsson because obviously we want the whole world to use cellular, but at the same time, those farmers are looking at me and they're like, "You want me to put hundreds or thousands of sensors on a field, each one with their own cellular SIM card with their own cellular plan? That sounds kind of crazy." And I heard a great analogy once. I'm not going to say it right because I'll screw it up, but like think back in your house and you probably got a variety of connected products, like your TVs or smart TVs, all kinds of things are in your house. And if someone told you that every one of those smart connected products that are throughout your house, you had to have a SIM card and a data plan for each one, you would say, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, screw that noise. I'll just open my door. I'll flip the switch myself.
Because what do we actually do? Well, most of these products are actually connected to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth inside your house. Yeah. And then they all come together and they all go out one pipe, which could be a cable modem or whatever, something else, fiber. Or you may have fixed wireless access, who knows? And so if you think, well, that's what's reasonable in my house, of course all my connected products are riding on my free Wi-Fi that I bought one time. And so why should it be any different when we deploy stuff to production in a field? And so maybe the right answer, and Wanky has talked about this when we've had him on, he's like, yes, I'm interested in LTE-M, but I'm interested in it as a backhaul network. And so I may cover a farm with LoRa, and then it's going to go to that gateway, and maybe that gateway has cellular, and one connection goes to the long range thing, but all the rest. And so, I know a lot of those people listening to us will go, well, duh, it's common sense. But we sure know a whole lot of people who are pushing the idea of every last endpoint should have a SIM card. And it just costs too much. It's a lot of money.
And hey, man, common sense is not all that common. That thing is so true. And sometimes we just lose perspective. And sometimes, when you state what seems like the obvious, your thinking hasn't evolved that way because you get wrapped up in these sort of the weird conversations that take you in a nonsensical or a non-commonsensical direction. It happens a lot. I mean, that's why you always have to kind of bat around ideas and have debates about things to keep your perspective fresh and accurate. I don't know if you can even be accurate. It's just so that you can be as nonsensical as possible and shape perspective that factors in all the as much I can't even think. It's horrible.
Yeah,
I'm losing.
Yes,
I need more coffee.
It is. No, you're right. But it's common sense, and we talk a lot of times about how economics always comes back into play, and it turns out that's one of the most important thing. And so I know I said it before after spending time with those farmers. I was like, oh crap, we can make this stuff work, but it's still too expensive. And I would say something ridiculous like, we're going to have to Walmart the shit out of this thing.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And it's true. And no offense to Walmart or being derogatory. They're all about low prices. But it's just like, there's no way around it. When you started adding up the cost of all these devices and data plans and all that, the farmer is like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
There's no ROI. Yeah. And so the device, the sensors, the connectivity, we got to beat the heck out of it in order for us to have wide adoption.
Yeah.
And even if it's not something that a farmer's paying for, let's talk about a public service. So in California, all over the West, we got fires all over the place. And we've talked about putting fire detection systems out in forests for early warning and things like that. I've worked with guys in Northern California a few years ago who are building something. There's folks inside Ericsson building stuff. I got other friends who worked with the USDA, I think, to do stuff. And so there's a lot of people working on it, but I'll hear stuff like, well, I'm going to put a bunch of Raspberry Pis in the forest. And, and it, with whatever sensors or AI or cameras to look at smoke and stuff like that. And you're like, dude, just stop. Just stop, please. It's like, because the reality is we need to sprinkle as many low-cost device and sensors across Western forests as we can. And that each one has to live on battery forever. Yeah. Because you can't just keep going out there replacing batteries all the time. I know a lot of people who are in the world of laptops and big computers. They don't have a lot of experience with a Raspberry Pi, and they think, oh, that's a little teeny tiny device that'll last forever. And the reality is it's about the biggest device you could imagine, and it uses a lot of energy. I bought I got a Raspberry Pi. I bought the Pi Juice hats that gives you up to a 5,000 milliamp or whatever battery.
Yeah.
And even has an attached giant fold out solar panel thing. I got the big 40-watt solar panel thing. But your ability to keep that thing running indefinitely, even in that setup, is not real.
Yeah.
Because it uses too much power, and so, and the cost, obviously, to deploy that per unit, the unit cost is just too high, right?
Yeah. And I think you're totally right. And this assumption that everything is going to go to the cloud and needs to go to the cloud, I think it drives the thinking in that direction, right? And all of a sudden you have to think about, well, how do I get data from endpoints and then get them to the cloud and do that securely? For some reason, especially with 5G, people are thinking, oh, well, you have to subscribe to that whole cellular modality of networking and connectivity, which is different from Wi-Fi. But I think one of the things that we probably need to think more about, and I think this is very relevant for the home, like smart home IoT, is local private networks versus this idea of private cloud. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Forget about if you're going to provide a home automation or home IoT smart, whatever the hell you want to call it, solution. Just assume that no data is going to go out of the house.
Right.
Except for some very, very specific purposes. But most of what you try to automate in your home on a day-to-day basis, the functions are local. There may be a few things that you might want to control when you're out and about. Sure, you'll probably need to go through the cloud to do that. But the default should be the home network is kind of like this atomic thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It should be, and then you can resolve some of these issues that you're talking about that impact the adoption of smart home technologies, because it's not like it's taking off. And I have a quote unquote smart home, and I don't really find too much value having given my personal information to probably like 50 different vendors and 50 different cloud providers, who probably won't be around, and half of them won't be around in the next 5 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What happens to my data, right?
Yeah.
What happens
Right.
to my home?
It's a valid point.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I just think that sometimes the way we think things should go create the economic barriers to adoption, and make the economics actually look kind of funky, because everybody wants your data instead of providing a solution that is, quite frankly, good for you. I mean, everyone tries to give the hardware and the connectivity for free. They just want your data. So what are you going to do with that data? Well, they're going to sell that shit off to somebody else and make money off of selling your personal data for marketing and whatever. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Personal marketing.
Yeah.
And so this whole data-centric, this obsession with data, and when they say data, they're really talking about your personal data. They're not talking about,
right.
Really, you know what I'm saying? That's what's precious. Because they can basically sell off whatever interaction that they capture through their products and services. They can take that information and then sell it to whoever to fill in the blanks or the gaps in your cyber profile that's growing in the dark web.
Totally.
That's money.
Yeah. You're right.
That's the way I feel,
You nailed it. Yeah.
And can you imagine it? 90% of the functions that are connected in my home, I know you could actuate and manage that stuff without having to go to the cloud. It's like, why does this have to trombone all the way to the cloud and back?
Right.
I just want to turn on my switch.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I'm saying?
And I guess the reason those products and services don't do it the way you want to is because that would blow up the business model for that company that absolutely wants your data going to their cloud. Because you're right, it's not necessary in many cases. It's like, hey, there's the extra value by being connected and doing stuff for me, but it could end here at my house.
Yeah.
And, I get the data, if it's a doorbell, a ringing doorbell or whatever it is, or a thermostat, why does it have to go somewhere to figure stuff out? These things have a lot of power on their own now to figure stuff out.
Right. Yeah.
You could have your own, I remember, the Mozilla folks, who make Firefox and all that. They, at some time in the past, they worked on some idea around smart home hub and things like that. Kind of, there's these guys that work for the W3C, and they kind of wrote a book about the web of things. And I like a lot of their ideas, actually. And Mozilla jumped on that bandwagon and tried to build some kind of stuff based on open web standards. And part of it was to try to break free of all these proprietary hubs by all these companies that are going to send your data somewhere else. Because they were saying the same thing as you are. We looked at this, and there's actually no extra value in sending the data away from your house to somewhere else. All the value can be self-contained in your home. Yeah. I mean, unless you're just talking about things like, how today we have quote unquote smart TVs with all these apps that let you watch Netflix and Disney and all that stuff. Yeah, that's fine. That I get it. It's doing something right in the moment and it's pulling it from the internet. I totally get it. But a lot of other things, could the Nest thermostat learn about my preferences on its own without talking to Google? Yeah. Obviously, Samsung's got its smart things. Apple has its HomeKit. Everybody's got their thing, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to build their own home ecosystems and have everyone plug into their hubs. I totally get the business model.
Yeah.
But the idea of sending data somewhere else, unless it's just absolutely that's the only way the thing works, we should rethink that. If it's ADT security sending stuff to, someone just broke into your house and we're alerting someone to call the police, sure, I get it. Of course, I guess.
And the argument for it would be, the firmware updates, the software updates, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I suppose I can see that, but the fact that each device brand requires you to register and do all this stuff for provisioning, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's too much,
Yeah.
I as a consumer looking at this stuff and having a technical and industry background, and so I just look at it and go, you know what? No wonder this stuff doesn't take off.
Yeah.
And so, quite honestly, I'm of the mind of ripping some of this stuff out, just deprovisioning and going completely Battlestar Galactica, because the stuff is that I barely use. I have these connected lights in my home. I always use the switch.
Right.
I never open up my app and go, hey, Google, give me sexy mood lighting for the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, heck, you had a good, on behalf of NextCurve, you had a good conversation with a guy who started the whole zero trust movement,
Yeah.
And that must have been really eye-opening, just hearing his perspective. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. He comes up with this concept, and he's absolutely frustrated that everyone is completely just confusing his concept.
Yeah.
They're saying, "Oh, my product is zero trust," and then
Marketing grabbed a hold of the term, didn't they?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think there would be huge value for just real practitioners or consultants who could do that for consumers as well as consumers as well as enterprises. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it'd probably be really good for a lot of folks to listen to your interview with him to get the real story.
Oh,
right,
dude, it was like he was trying to get all this frustration and angst off of his chest, and it was great. He thanked me for that as well, because he appreciates those types of forums where he can just basically say, hey, look guys, this is where you guys are not getting this stuff right.
But totally.
You know what? I mean, talk about somebody who really looked at the problem and did some out of the box thinking and saying, look, this is really not the way we should be doing stuff. And 95% of what he's selling to you is not a product. It's just practices. It's a strategy. You know what I'm saying? And,
totally.
And you can't buy it out of a box. You can't even say that, oh, this is zero trust compliant, or this supports zero trust. And it's like, no, it's a tool that can be implemented if the organization wants to implement zero trust strategies to harden, protect stuff.
Totally.
We already have plenty of stuff that can secure the perimeter. It's just how do you implement the protections of the critical assets? Everything else probably is going to just get hacked. It's like, what are those things that are really important? Like customers' personal data that needs to be absolutely protected, and you make sure that you know everything that accesses that data. Those resources. So
totally.
It's a different way of, it's weird. People had it in their back of their minds, but they're so fixated on, these firewalls and gateways and all these other, sort of perimeter, this different discipline of security, or the traditional discipline of security. He just kind of stated the obvious. Do you know what I'm saying? But that was the genius of what he did, is like, hey guys, we kind of think this way, but how come we don't really talk about it in a structured way, and then boom, zero trust. How do we trust stuff in the network when we're always getting
right? Totally.
It's just
totally. I remember spending, when we're building Azure, when I was at Microsoft, the term was the assumed breach, where we operated under the notion that we assumed the bad guys are already inside. And that's how your mind should be working. And then what do you do next?
And he just created a framework for it. But that's sort of how I think, especially just IoT really needs to think about those principles in products, how they design products, but products are not designed that way. Right. And what was it that Dave said? Is it just takes one open port that was configured wrong that for all the virulent traffic to come through that and compromise your whole network. It all boils down to implementation. So you cannot buy zero trust out of a box. You have to implement it.
Yes.
So the service providers, I think it's the plumbers. The guys who are going to be wearing the overalls and coming into your home or into your offices or your factories. Those are the guys who are going to help you do zero trust if you give a shit about it.
There you go, folks.
You have to give a shit about it first. No one can bring it into your organization.
You're so right. So it's all about the plumbers.
It is. And you know what? I realize now why plumbers they don't do now for some reason, or some plumbers don't wear overalls.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder why.
See, I'm going to state another obvious.
All right.
There's a thing called a plumber's crack, right?
Yes.
If you have overalls on, there's no crack. And if you look at like videos from the 50s and before, you always saw the plumber coming in overalls, right?
Yes.
Not just painters, plumbers.
Not just painters, plumbers.
Right. And
yeah.
then when did we start having this plumber crack problem?
I don't know, but I'm so glad that you brought it.
Yes.
I'm just glad you brought it back to the forefront.
Yes.
Of the collective psyche of everyone listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So remember this. Yeah. That's going to be the new uniform for the IoT guys.
There you go.
The IoT plumbers out there, you're going to wear overalls.
I like that.
You can have, you have all those pockets, utility pockets. You can have your 4WAN antennas, and
what was the band from the 80s that sang "Come On, Eileen"? That they were wearing overalls.
I forgot the name of that group.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, were they Irish or something? I can't remember. I don't know.
No, they're probably one of the many wonderful bands to come out of the UK.
Wait, it was Dixie's Midnight Runners.
Oh, no way.
That's who it was.
Amazing.
It just popped into my head. I don't know. Come On, Eileen, and they were wearing overalls. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the style back then was to have one of the straps hanging down.
Yes.
Back in the 80s.
They'll still do it. Still do it.
Yeah, you're right.
You just need one strap.
Just one strap, folks.
Yeah, one strap.
Oh my God.
Hey, look, I'm just stating the obvious.
You are.
It's like, uncommon common sense.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? There was common sense.
One day.
Overalls are goofy looking outfits, right?
Yeah.
Whoever came up with them, you'd have to think, look, you know what? You were never going to see anyone walk down the fashion runway in New York.
Right.
Wearing overalls. Maybe.
It's funny is you wonder.
Really avant-garde weirdos, but there's a truly practical reason for it. And
when I was on the submarine, we wore something, they weren't like kind of denim overalls, but we wore these kind of jumpsuits that you could put on kind of similarly, and you wear it every day. Everyone wore the same jumpsuit, or we called them poopy suits. I don't know why. And don't go there, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so everybody on the submarine, like you had your normal whatever your uniform was when you're out on the land or on the surface. But as soon as you're underway, everyone, no matter who you were on the submarine, shifted to wearing these kind of dark navy blue jumpsuits that you'd zip up the middle. You kind of just get, maybe it was part of practicality, kind of like, what we're talking about overalls, if you're asleep and all of a sudden you start hearing the alarms going off to man battle stations, you got to jump out of your rack and get there. And so it's easy to just grab this whole jumpsuit and you just jump into it. Your legs jump in, zip it up, and you're running, to wherever your battle station is.
Right.
So yeah, just practicality.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then also probably in critical situations like that, you don't want to be distracted with a bunch of butt cracks everywhere, right? Because they have valves and controls everywhere, right?
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head.
Down the bottom, middle,
You're right. You nailed it.
I'm telling you.
You're right.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Probably one of the worst episodes we've ever done. I don't know.
Yes.
Somebody got something out of this.
I hope so.
You just have crappy episodes.
We'll just think of this as a warm up for our event coming up a little later.
No.
We'll be,
Yeah, this is a rehearsal for what not to do.
What not to do. Exactly.
Okay, my brother. We'll
all right.
talk soon.
Sounds good, man.
About an hour and 45 minutes, actually. So
yes. Yeah, it's kind of a weird time. It's like, do I eat lunch before then? Or because I have like calls right after that's over, back to back.
You should eat now.
Yeah, probably so.
You should have been eating while we were talking.
Just like, yeah, I hear you.
All right. Hey, so you want to take us out?
Yes. Hey, if you're so inclined, if you weren't totally put off by this conversation and thinking, I never want to hear from these guys ever again. If you're a glutton for punishment and you want this kind of abuse on a weekly basis, then we've got your place. If you're tired of Joe Rogan and you want something even more bizarre, then here we are. And so come check us out at iotcoffeetalk.com. We're on YouTube. We're on podcasts. We're all over the place. And so you can be offended in many different types of media channels, which is great. So please subscribe, hit that bell on YouTube. We're not on TikTok, but who knows? That could change.
Yeah.
I think today's episode felt like something. This episode felt like it should be on TikTok, actually.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're out of here. Come on, Eileen, put on your overalls with a strap down, do a little dance on TikTok, and the world is your oyster. And we're out.
I like that. Take care.
Bye.